All right, I am here with Justin Dalenberg here in Jackson, Michigan. It's just a privilege here to get to know Justin. We've only met one time before here in 2021. Yes, we're at the end of the pandemic, and from the little bit I know about the restaurant industry, they've been crushed during the pandemic. But you're looking at a man right now that has started more than one restaurant during the pandemic here in Jackson and is succeeding. And for those of you who have been with the course, he, I think, typifies a lot of what works for an entrepreneur, including the hedgehog model. We've talked with Jim Collins, but Justin, I'm just so happy that you'd be willing to talk to my students. So first, thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
And then
everybody.
A little personal note, my mother grew up in the restaurant business. She was the daughter of German immigrants, so they ran a German restaurant in Ann Arbor, and she always said to me when I was a little boy, long before I ever wanted to go into business for myself, Ron, don't go into the restaurant business. It's really, really hard, because she lived it, okay?
She's right.
And they struggled to survive, but they made it, but she never wanted her kids to go into that. We do know that the restaurant business has a high failure rate. When I met with you a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that without me saying it, like 90% plus.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to start restaurants, and some of them can be successful, and I've known restaurant owners who are happy, who have thriving businesses, but this is a really tough time. Not just the pandemic, but the labor shortage and all kinds of things. So first, Justin, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about your background. Why did you even want to go into the restaurant business to start with?
Since I was very little, I was passionate about food.
Okay.
Always. I remember being 3 or 4 years old. My mother was making apple pie, and I wanted the dough, and I made crackers for everybody. They were terrible, but just the act of making something and sharing it with people was infatuating to me. And
Nice.
then as a young boy, I watched PBS. There was Julia Child.
I remember.
And Great Chefs of the World and Great Chefs of America. We didn't have Food Network when I was a kid, but that was always my favorite thing to watch, right? And then my mother ran a small Swedish bakery in the back of a Christian counseling center.
Really?
Yep. And it was called Bread of Life Swedish Bakery. They made limpa bread and cardamom rolls. And
you're a Michigan boy. Was this in Port Huron area?
Yeah,
okay.
in Port Huron, yeah.
Okay.
And, I was a troublemaker of a child. And so naturally at 8 years old, instead of going home with my brother and sister alone with them, I got to walk my butt down to the bakery and wash dishes and put cake boxes and help clean up, and I loved it. I loved washing dishes and mopping the floors, and I just loved being in a kitchen. So at 12, I got a job at a little Greek restaurant that my father's friend owned, Tom Mannis Restaurant, and I worked there, and I worked at a banquet hall with a guy named Mike Moretz, who was a serial entrepreneur, great man. Learned a lot of values as a business person from him. He really took care of us as employees. He used to pick me up from school.
When you were a young teenager, 12, 13?
12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
He would pick me up from school, bring me to work. I would wash dishes, clean the floors. Eventually he taught me how to prep vegetables and whatnot and cook. And, kind of laid a foundation for what it is to be, an employer. But at that time, I didn't know I wanted to be an employer. I just wanted to be a chef. That was my goal. I wanted to be a big-time chef running huge operations. And what that meant, I didn't know yet because I hadn't been out in the world enough. But my first entree into the restaurant business, I was 15. My boss at the time was going through a divorce with his wife, and he said, "I don't want you working here through this, very father-like with me."
Oh.
And he's like, "I want to get you a job with Chuck Muir."
Oh, yeah, and for those who don't know, this is the big name in Detroit, Chuck Muir Restaurant.
He was the most prolific restaurateur during the 80s and 90s, and so they had a restaurant in St. Clair around where I grew up, and it's called the River Crab, one of his original restaurants, $7 million a year restaurant, beautiful place. I started there as a prep cook, and by the time I was 16, 17, worked my way up to being a sous chef, and I was doing the job of somebody who should be in their 20s and 30s, working 60, 70 hours a week. Running a kitchen, doing big numbers, and all scratch food. We cut all of our own fish, cut our own steaks, made our own pasta, you name it, made our own bread. And I was infatuated with it. So I didn't really care too much about school, but I was able to get into a secondary culinary arts program at the St. Clair Hospitality Academy.
This was during your high school years?
This was during high school, while I was working at Chuck Muir's restaurant as a sous chef. So I went there half the day, went to high school half the day. Moved out my last year of high school, partied a lot. But in that time, my culinary school instructor took a lot of stock in me, and she had me become an officer for Skills USA VICA, which is Vocational Industrial Clubs of America, because that was a way to kind of get me out of partying so much.
Give you a little responsibility.
Give me a little responsibility, give me something to work for. I think she saw something in me that I didn't know I had, and because at the time I was like, I just want to be the corporate chef of this company. That was my dream at that time. And she didn't want me to do that. She wanted me to do something greater than that company. So she got me into competitions. First year I got third in states, and I didn't make it to nationals, and it really pissed me off.
But your first year out, still not too bad.
Didn't matter. I'm
third in
very
Michigan.
Competitive. Very
I see
competitive.
that.
That was out of 4,600 students. So
wow.
The next year I went back with the fire, and I trained a lot, and I was working in this awesome kitchen. So I got to practice cooking every day at work and at school. So long story short, I won. And
you won the national competition your second time
I won
around.
the states, and then I went to nationals. And I got a full ride to Johnson Wales University,
which is I would say a well-regarded culinary college with several campuses around the United States.
Tyler Florence went there. Emeril Lagasse went there. It's a good school. I mean, there's that and the Culinary Institute of America, and I got a full ride to both.
Fantastic.
And I never thought I was going to go to college or university. I didn't have that option. I didn't have family money, and I didn't have money of my own, so I never thought about it. But then when I got this opportunity, I took it, got my degree. I worked at a phenomenal restaurant while I was in school, Pot au Feu French restaurant. And
was this Providence, Rhode Island?
Yep.
Where Johnson Wales, their main campus is there, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I was the only kid in my class that I had 3 jobs. So I literally, from the time I left high school to going to that school, I had a full class load. I worked at Regency Cigar Emporium, the Union Trust banquet hall, and I worked at the Pot au Feu restaurant. So I did not take a day off the entire time I was at college. Not one.
Wow. But you were doing what you're passionate about.
Absolutely. I loved it. There was nothing that was going to stop me. When I went to school, what I learned was the scope of the world culinary stage. I learned the difference between being a hotel chef, a restaurateur chef, and being also an entrepreneur, right? I got to kind of get exposed to those different avenues, and that's where I really decided that I wanted to be a restaurateur.
An owner of restaurants.
Yeah, of many restaurants. But I knew that I wasn't going to be a good one unless I learned discipline. And so I decided to go and, I worked in Mackinac Island, and I did the Grand Hotel.
I hate to interrupt you, but I need to park on that, because one of the things that I really like about you, and I think my students will, we can see the humility. And again, if we study Jim Collins, that is the hallmark of great business leaders that he's seen in studying over 30,000 companies. Humility, and I know you have it. Part of your humility, as you said earlier, you were a partier. You partied a lot in high school and all that. So what happened that made you see, I need to have discipline? I mean, you're still a very young man, maybe a late teenager, maybe 20, but you're realizing, I need to have discipline to be able to own restaurants. Can you go a little deeper into that? Or do you recall what happened?
Well, I got to meet a lot of well-known, famous chefs when I was at school. And I worked at one of the best, French restaurants out on the East Coast, and the level of discipline and respect for the craft was something I hadn't really experienced before. I mean, here in Michigan, what we called a chef was not a chef on the East Coast. Not at the level that we were talking about at the 5-star, 5-diamond hotels and like places like the Chandler and Newport. I guess I got a new respect for what it meant to be a chef. At school, my school that I went to, you had to have your fingers clean every day. Your shoes had to be polished. Your pants had to be creased. Your jacket had to be creased. Your hat had to be straight. Your neckerchief had to be done a certain way. And it was very military. And the reason for that was, long ago, Auguste Escoffier, the grandfather of Nouvelle Cuisine, he created this military type environment for chefs because, he regarded what we do on the same level as a doctor or a lawyer or Because before that, you were a servant, you were a rotosor, you worked for a lord of the land, and it was a very sort of serf type lord mentality until Gus Escoffier said, no, restaurateurs, chefs, we're professionals. We have to learn a lot of information to do what we do, and should be a highly respected and regarded profession. But to garner that, there's got to be a uniform. There's got to be a way of doing things. And I think that when I saw that and I learned that, I dug deep into books at that point in time too. Like I read every single book on restaurant history, culinary history. I just wanted to know everything. I was so hungry, and I was not a good student. I was a terrible student. I graduated high school with a 2.7. I graduated university top 10 in my class because I was passionate what I was learning.
Yes.
And so the turning point, and I did not drink during college. So I drank more when I was in high school than I did in college. In college, I did not drink. I refused to because I realized I just didn't have enough hours in the day. Because I got up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I went to school at 7. I got up at 2. I went to work at 3. I got to work at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning every single day. But in the meantime, I've read as many books as I possibly could. So, where the turning point came, I became infatuated. And I realized if I wanted to be great at something, I had to fully immerse myself into it and try to be better than everybody else. And
it sounds like, in addition to kind of the military discipline, you're like a high-level artist. And I'm thinking of like a musician. And, we value freedom. We all value freedom. I value it a great deal. But sometimes people think freedom is like, I can do whatever I want right now. But to be really good, like think of a violinist. You don't just hand somebody a violin and say, "Here, kid, be free." It'll hurt your ears. Right. But if you have that discipline for year after year after year to really know those scales and really get that down, eventually you get to the point where you really can have the freedom to be creative and to make something beautiful. It seems like there's an analogy there to maybe like an artist or a musician. You saw that if I really want to be good at this, I got to stop messing around and I got to be disciplined and really know the details of my craft really well.
Well, and it's not about being good at something, because to me being good at something was not enough. It was about being great at something, and to be great at something, you have to sacrifice. If you want to play a sport, you want to be great at a sport, then you need to spend time in the gym, and you have to do the hard work to get to the point where you get to the game. And every time you play the game, you win the game. And it's the same thing in the restaurant business. The reason why our restaurants are as successful as they are is not because we have the most creative, amazing food in the world that is mind-blowing. It is consistently good all the time, and it's better. We try to be better than everybody in our market. And that's not because we're arrogant or we think we're better than anybody. That is not our mentality. Our mentality is that we want to be the best, so that way we are proud of what we do.
Okay. And if I could, I'd like to bring it back to Michigan now. And I know here we're sitting in Jackson, Michigan. We're actually on the second floor of Veritas. And I think your wife and some other folks own this restaurant, but obviously you're actively involved. And then just down
I just watched The Office for it.
2 blocks behind me here. So we're on Michigan Avenue in downtown Jackson, and just up the road off Mechanic Street is Grand River Brewery, started by another great entrepreneur in Jackson, John Bertka, but you bought him out in January of 2021. And then maybe 3 or 4 blocks down on Cooper Road is Dalenberger, and we can see your shirt. Hopefully you can see your shirt, which is a takeoff on your name, Dalenberg. And you've also got a Dalenberger's in Tecumseh. And to go back to kind of where I started, we're still kind of in the coronavirus pandemic, and this restaurant Veritas is. Well, you bought it from John earlier this year. Dalenberger is what, a year or 2 old? When did
we opened Dalenberger's in Jackson in November, so not even a year old. Tecumseh was started in May, so that's a little over.
May of 2020.
Of 2020, yeah. It's a little over a year old right now. And it's actually profitable, which is amazing. I just found that out this week. We closed our month of July, and it's profitable, which is nice because that doesn't usually happen in the restaurant business. So it's good.
Well, congratulations, first of all. May of 2020 was like the depth of the coronavirus, but all of 2020 and into 2021 has been tough. But so first, again, I want to thank you because Jackson, John Bertka, again, who you were partnering with for several years, he once showed me some pictures and I think even some artist drawings of Jackson in the 1950s. And it was a thriving city. We were the machine shop for the auto industry. When the I came from the auto industry. American auto industry in the 50s, 90% of the cars in the world were made in North America. It's hard to imagine, 90%. Now the big three have less than a 50% share, even of the US market, but 90% of the cars in the world. So Jackson was a thriving city. Jackson really took a hit in the 70s and the 80s. and lots of empty storefronts. We still have some, but it's coming back.
Yeah.
And even when I started at Jackson College in 2011, which is 10 years ago, it was hard to find a decent place to eat in Jackson. It's not hard now. I've worked during the pandemic. I've been working in downtown Jackson here. I can walk to 3 really great restaurants, and you own all of them. So thank you, because Jackson restaurants are great anchors to help build communities, and Jackson is being built. So thank you for that. But if I can ask, what brought you back to Jackson, and then why 3 very different restaurants? A hamburger place, a good hamburger place, Dalenbergers, Grand River Brewery, which you bought out, John Burka, which I think was started around 2013, somewhere around there.
2013, yeah.
And I love it because it's a high level restaurant, but it's got this Jackson kind of industrial feel. Because remember, we're the machine shop for the auto industry, and a lot of manufacturing talent here. But then we're sitting on the second floor of Veritas, which is a very elegant fish and like beef restaurant. So going back to Jim Collins and the hedgehog concept, we can see your passion, we can see your skill level, which are 2 of the 3. But the third is the economic model, which is really understanding what is it that the customers want and how can we make money. Why 3 such different models, and why do they all work in a small town of Jackson, Michigan?
That's a good question.
It's a tough question, but I had to ask it for our students.
So I started consulting for John after his second year in business. The business was doing okay, but wasn't super profitable.
And just to be clear, that was just Grand River Brewery. Was John Burka's
yeah, and
first
at
business.
that time there was not very many restaurants downtown.
Mm-hmm.
The occupancy of storefronts was not there yet. Honestly, I was living in Ann Arbor. I worked for Zingerman's and Amway Hotel Corporation previously here in Michigan, so I really had only experienced the upper echelon of food and beverage, but I was consulting, so I was working with all these small entrepreneurs all over the state, and the one who intrigued me the most of my 14 clients at the time was definitely John. John is one of the biggest, most amazing personalities you ever meet. He's very energetic. He's very passionate about this town. I knew nothing about Jackson. He taught me everything about it, introduced me to all the players in this town, and I fell in love with it. My parents live in Onstead. They bought an old farm, so I'm familiar with the Irish Hills. My sister and my brother-in-law, they settled here. Thus the reason we all kind of settled here. I actually spent most of my adult life up to this point in Aspen, Colorado, and abroad working.
Mm-hmm.
So working with him, we built up Grand River Brewery. We doubled the sales in about 2 or 3 years. How do we do that? Consistency, quality, culture. We implemented great game of business and open book finance. We really focused on quality. That was huge, right? Consistency. I know I say that a lot, but sorry.
And if I can just chime in, I've gone to Grand River now probably since 2013. It has been my favorite restaurant, and the consistency was there. But you mentioned the word culture, which we talk a lot about in our classes, and I know when you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, it's important. How do you build a culture? I can walk into most businesses now, and certainly Grand River, and I can tell within a minute, what the culture is like just by looking at the faces of the employees and the way they interact with people. You've got something special in all of your restaurants.
Yeah.
This is probably the hardest question for me, and I think for many people in business, is how do you build a culture that's consistent, where people actually want to come into work and really give a great experience to their customers? Because everybody says they want to do that. All of my students say they will do that, but we all know going into businesses, most businesses don't do that.
Well,
how do you do it?
Our mission statement at Dalenbergers is we deliver hospitality one order at a time
Okay.
with products we believe in to people we care about.
Uh-huh.
And that is bottom line what we do. And food's not first, right? We take care of people, and we teach that. So our culture is 100% driven by pride and passion for what we do. We love the products that we serve. We educate everybody about what we do and how we do it and why it's so good. We taste our products all the time with our team. We talk about it. We have a culture of inclusion. We don't think that we know everything. We ask people what they think. We include all of our team in annual planning. We're just actively engaged with everybody we work with, and we respect everybody enough to know that we don't know everything, and we expect people to push us to be better, our team. And you had asked a question earlier though about the finances and the economics of it all, and why we would do this in this town. This is the perfect town to do what we're doing, and it's a great, I wouldn't say experiment, but it's a testament to, if you believe in something, it can work anywhere.
Mm.
Grand River Brewery went from being a $2 million a year restaurant to being a $4.5 million a year restaurant in a very short period of time by just focusing on the basics: quality of service, quality of food, people, organization, just that, right? And sticking to it. And it's not easy, right? The wheels do fall off sometimes, but we're really good at putting them back on and keeping the car running down the road. And the difference between a good race team and a bad race team in the NASCAR world is how quickly they change their tires.
Okay.
And so systematically, we've figured out how to change our tires quickly when we need to. And being able to be resilient through all things has been a very strong asset of our entire team. We've gotten used to getting slapped in the face and getting back up.
Okay.
Now, we want to diversify ourselves in this market because we realize that there is not a seafood steakhouse restaurant in this market. There's not. There's steakhouses. There's Red Lobster, but there is not a privately owned awesome seafood steakhouse restaurant in this town, and this town used to have many. So we brought this back to life to fill that niche, right? It was a niche. There was a void in this market, and also the private events at that level, there just wasn't a product in this market that could service that. We found that we've been successful at servicing that. Now, Dalenbergers, that was just really a personal thing of, I don't like any fast food burgers, period. They suck. They're not high quality. The buns are always industrially manufactured. The meat is mystery meat. And, I don't feel comfortable feeding it to my children, so why would I, want to feed stuff like that to my guests? And then also like French fries. Like, I love French fries, like I'm a Dutch guy, like I have French fries, potatoes in my blood, and like we get the best potatoes. I actually have a sticker somewhere around here. Chipperbeck potatoes. It's here on my desk. I have shirts too. I love the company. They're prideful about having the finest potatoes for chefs, and those are the potatoes that we get from out west, and we import them by the semi-truckload.
Wow.
To have the best French fries. And so like that was the premise of Dalenbergers. We didn't want to be a burger and restaurant or burger and French fry restaurant. We wanted to be the best
kind of
burger and French fry restaurant. And we weren't even talking about just in Jackson. I mean, like, we're starting here and we have a lot to learn. We're not there yet. That's why we haven't opened up hundreds, because we still are refining our concept. But I mean, really, like we're Jackson is our proving grounds for the future of a very large hospitality company. I mean, our goal is to double almost in size year after year strategically in markets just like Jackson. We don't want to go into the giant overpopulated areas. We want to go to the underserved areas like Jackson, because this was a very underserved market. And look at what happened when we served the market. It's growing. There's new apartments every other month. There's people moving back here. There's an engineering firm moving their world headquarters downtown, Commonwealth. And I mean, that stuff is not, it's not because of us, but we're a part of this wheel, this cog. And the future of our company is to be a cog in many wheels across the Midwest. But how do we do that? Well, we got to get people who are as passionate about what we do here in other cities.
And to really underscore that, and to thank you again, behind me is Michigan Avenue here, which is the heart of Jackson for those of you who aren't from Jackson. But 10 years ago, I mean, there was like a pretty good delicatessen across the street, and this building actually had a decent restaurant in it. But I mean, within 2 or 3 years, all of that was gone, and we just empty storefronts, no good restaurants, retailers. The nice jewelry store that was across the street maybe 5 years ago, they left. Furniture stores left. I mean, this was becoming a ghost town. And then John, and then you come in and start putting these good restaurants, and people start coming back into the city. And as you say, now bigger businesses say, hey, it's kind of a nice place to hang out. As I said, I've been here all summer, and usually on weekend evenings, there's big festivals going on down here. People are eating outside. They've got the Bright Walls campaign, but you guys have been a big part of that. So I wanted to thank you again for that. And I mentioned to you we're going to have 30 minutes. We got about 5 minutes left, sadly. I knew this would happen. There's so much to talk about. But I want to get back to economic model. Now, you did mention you're going to have consistency, culture, high quality. I get that, and I see that in all of them. I guess I want to go over to Dalenbergers, because it was exciting what you mentioned, that you want to have like a premium hamburger restaurant, maybe take it national. And I didn't ask you about this before we turned on the camera, but I see almost an analogy to like Chick-fil-A, which is a fairly expensive fast food restaurant, but the customer experience is just incredible there. I could tell you story after story. But when we're outside of Michigan, because there are very few here, we always go to Chick-fil-A. I see that maybe you could do that on the hamburger side.
That's the plan.
Is that so? But I can see it when I drive up to the window or I go into a Dalenberger, I'm greeted by somebody that seems like they want to be there. When I go into, and I won't even name any other fast food restaurants, everybody knows several of them. I almost never get that where I'm greeted by, I feel like it's people like, they can't wait to get out of work, you know, and like I'm a bother to them to be there.
Right.
It's a very different feeling. So,
well, there's a difference in the company culture, right? One is
yes.
serving the guest primarily, one is serving stockholders primarily.
Yeah.
And when you're that's why our company is always going to be employee owned, corporate owned for its eternity, because we don't want to lose that part of us, which is hospitality. So,
but how do you find people? This is the hardest market I've ever seen in my life hire.
It's
and keep.
easy. You just find good people.
How do you do that?
They don't have to have experience. You just you talk to people. You get to know them. You ask them about their merits, what they believe in, what they care about, what makes them tick. You know, and if they're a genuine good person, we can teach people skills. That's easy. Teaching people skills is easy, especially at Dalenbergers. We've designed that restaurant to train anybody from any background how to do a job. But the one thing we can't teach people is how to have integrity and how to be good, honest, respectful, hardworking people. So we try to find individuals who are exceptional and then teach them exceptional skills.
I think you might have mentioned last time I talked, you know about Rich Sheridan, or you know Rich Sheridan, who runs Menlo Innovations in Ann Arbor. But loved the book, recommend his book Joy Inc. I recommend it to my students. But Rich says in that book, most job interviews are two people lying to each other for about an hour. The employer saying, this is the greatest place to work, you'll love it. And the employee saying, oh, I'll do whatever you want, and I really want to work here. And they're lying. They just basically want to use each other. And shortly after the person starts, they realize that and everybody's miserable. So you mentioned you kind of interview people and you can sense if they have integrity. This is a very difficult thing for a lot of employers. How do you know when you're talking to somebody, that person's not lying to me? They really do.
We don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know. I mean, it's just not that easy. I mean, the hardest thing about running any business is people, right? I mean, so we try to be very transparent up front. We tell people if it's a hard job, that it's a hard job. We do not sugarcoat things, and we expect reciprocal honesty. Now, can we manage that? No. We just hope that we make good decisions. And do we make bad decisions? Oh yeah, we do all the time. But like I said, we've gotten good at changing the wheels on the car. Okay. So when we need to react, and our secret sauce is we have a very strong corporate team. So we're centralized in our management. We have an amazing CFO and COO, and corporate chef and controller and human resources and marketing director. We have a core of people that work on all of our businesses. So they're able to support expansion from the inside, and we've taken it a step further with vertical integration that we've started our own butcher shop. We buy whole animals, we control our own beef market. We are not victim to the global or national beef market because it is extremely volatile and it can kill your margins very quickly. And so we took that power away from the market in our businesses and we control it on our own. We did the same thing with bread. Started our own bakery, and so we've now expanded to interdepartmental sort of smaller economic drivers, and we now have turned them into large economic drivers in our business. And that vertical integration, not only does it save us tons of money, it makes our product even better.
And it's locally sourced, and people like that. Some people will come to you because they know this is Michigan product.
Yeah, we buy our steers from people that we know. We can drive to their farms and go look at the animals and see how healthy they are and how happy they are, and happy farmer, happy steers, really good food.
And I know I'm supporting the local economy if I buy your restaurant, and not just that retail outlet, but the whole supply chain is mostly locally sourced. So that's an attraction for a lot of folks. We only have a couple minutes. I do want to talk a little bit about. I know you've done some charity work, and we talked to our students about finding a charitable cause that you're passionate about and linking with it. And I know you're passionate about a lot of things, so I want to just let you speak. But what are some of the things that you're doing to build the community other than just the business itself?
So 2 examples with Dalenbergers. When we started Dalenbergers Tecumseh, we made a commitment that our first day sales, a portion of that was going to go to the Early Learning Center. So it's a nonprofit that's geared towards helping young children with learning disabilities and whatnot. That's something I'm very passionate about. I'm not saying I don't like to help adults, but I think that children are a little bit more moldable.
Yes.
And I know that some children, unfortunately, don't have the same opportunities as other small children. So I'd say that a lot of what we're geared towards are young families and children and helping people get back up on their feet. So, we did the Aware Shelter here in Jackson. We opened Dalenbergers and we donated money to that. And then, every month people ask us to donate for different local charitable events, whether it's to raise money for the King Center, we've been involved with that, or it's to help Lifeways, a mental health clinic here in town. I can't really pinpoint exactly every charity that we've donated to, but we believe in giving as a part of our business, right? We don't make a budget for how much we contribute. We have parameters and things that we will contribute to. We do not contribute to political causes. We don't contribute to political movements. We're not
Which can
that.
actually divide your customer base if you do that. I
And
try to say it to my students, go ahead and support a charity, but I would really advise against like a political party or a candidate, because the rule of thumb is once you support a political party or candidate, you alienate half of your customers.
Yeah, and that's just, we're a place for everybody. We're highly inclusive. So we won't tie ourselves to any organization, to that matter, that has any political drive whatsoever. But what we do is we help, specifically women and children, and early learning efforts. We work with local schools and try to help kids that need, a second chance or a chance to succeed. So we offer jobs to folks in those situations. And one of our future projects is to start a nonprofit hospitality school to help people in just this local market be able to learn skills and gain professional sort of foundation blocks so they can go out and get a good high earning job in the hospitality field. And our team is going to help build that. So at the end of the day, right?
I just want to say and I'm sorry to say you've got 5 seconds left on my battery. It's going to cut off, students, so I apologize. But thank you, Justin. You can have the last word, but it may cut off on you.
Well, at the end of the